There's so many unsettling stories that come out of Alaska. Sometimes the danger is another person. Sometimes it's the environment itself. And sometimes it's that feeling you get when your instincts are screaming that something is wrong, even when you can't explain why. This is Static Hour, a late-night broadcast of strange and unsettling stories from the darkest corners of the internet. I'm Bree, and tonight I have Brittany with me, and we are officially on the air. So we're back for another one of our state episodes, and tonight we're heading farther north than we've ever been, to Alaska. It's a place that's almost impossible to compare to anywhere else in the country. There's vast stretches of wilderness, tiny communities, separated by mountains, waters, and hundreds of miles of nothing. It's beautiful until you realize how easy it would be for the silence to swallow you whole. All right, our first story tonight comes from user RainyAlaska1. It's from the subreddit Creepy Encounters, and this is from about 6 years ago. The post is called Nighttime Creepy Encounter with a Road Rage Truck in Alaska. Newbie here with my first post. This story happened 7 or 8 years ago. I was a single mom living on an island in southeast Alaska. There are only 26 miles of road on the island, so it's a small place. It was a Friday night. My kid and I were scheduled to fly out of town for a long weekend to Seattle. So I worked all day, picked up the kid, and headed to the airport. Our flight to Seattle was canceled, so we rescheduled for the first flight in the morning and headed home at about 8:30 p.m. As a side note, I wasn't a fan of cell phones and did not yet have one. After this incident, I got a cell phone. We lived about 14 miles north of town. I was tired and frustrated about our canceled flight, so I was probably driving a little faster than normal. About 3 miles from home, I came up behind a dark-colored pickup truck. This truck was going slower than I was, so I slowed down, but I still got a little close to the truck's bumper. I tried to pass the truck, but realized I was in a no-passing zone. The driver evidently felt I was tailgating too close because they slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. People occasionally do this since we only have one main road on the island. I hit the gas, pulled around the truck, and headed home. Immediately, the truck sped up and moved right up to my back bumper. I started thinking, okay, you're pissed that I tailgated you. Message received, now back off. The truck did not back off. The driver turned off their headlights so I can no longer see how close they were. Oh, I hate that. I increased my speed a little, hoping to get rid of them. Then all of a sudden, the headlights came back on, and the truck was inches from my car. At this point, my preteen daughter started to get a little worried. She turned in her seat and was looking out the back window. It was very dark with no streetlights, so we couldn't see anyone in the truck, which made it even creepier. The truck turned off and on their headlights several more times. Each time the lights would come back on, the truck would be right on my tail. We got close to our turn off the main road into our residential neighborhood. I signaled and hoped that the truck would keep going straight. I turned and the truck turned. Okay, don't go home. Don't go home. No. We're not victim blaming, but please don't go home. Our street was about 3 blocks away, but I did not want to turn down my dark road with this angry truck following me. Okay. But still, he knows the neighborhood, and he knows your car. So maybe just keep going next time. This is Alaska. Everyone opens a gun, and there are no open carry laws. So I don't turn down our street, but I keep driving straight while trying to reassure my daughter that everything was okay. Less than a mile from my house is a large elementary school with a basketball court, running tracks, hiking trails, and a big playground. The school's driveway and parking lot are open until 10 p.m. for students and neighbors to use. At 10 p.m., the gate is closed and locked. I decided to drive directly to the school because there are often people there, even at 8:30 at night. I drove up the driveway and into the parking lot of the school. There were 3 or 4 cars parked, but I didn't see any people outside. I parked between the cars directly under a streetlight. Okay, this is kind of this like image that just popped into my head though is they have cars beside them, and all I'm thinking is like the truck is gonna come and like pull up in front of you, and then you're boxed in. But maybe they just mean in the vicinity. I don't know. That immediately, I just read it and it was like, oh, hate that.
Yeah. My first thought was like, oh, streetlight, yay. People, yay.
Sure. Yeah, that's probably what they were thinking as well. The truck followed us up the driveway but didn't enter the parking lot. The truck stayed in the middle of the driveway just at the entrance of the parking lot. It was as if the driver was blocking the driveway with their truck. Let's see. The driver turned off their headlights and waited in their vehicle. We waited for the truck to leave or for someone to come out of school. We waited and waited. About 15 minutes later, the truck turned on their headlights, back up, and drove down the school's driveway toward the main road. Oh, thank goodness. We were relieved, but I decided to wait another 5 minutes just to be sure. We were tired and hadn't even eaten dinner yet, so eventually I started the car and decided to leave the school parking lot. It was only a few blocks to home. As we got to the end of the school's driveway, I turned right towards the home. There were no other cars on the street that I could see. As soon as my car made the turn, bright headlights came on directly behind us. Nope.
No.
The truck had not left. The driver had hidden behind the driveway's gate, turned off their headlights, and waited for us. As soon as our car pulled out of the driveway, the driver turned on their headlights on high beams and rushed right up to my back bumper. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but road rage is not worth that amount of patience.
Mm-mm. No. Well, and I was about to say, too, this has been at least 30 minutes now that this car has been doing
you made your point. All right, cool. Even if you wanted to, take it to the extreme, drive by, flip them off, which I don't recommend, that's rude, but, if you're that mad, that's better than, sitting here waiting.
Yep.
That long. That's commitment to your petty.
Well, and also, my thing is, yes, if I'm the guy in the truck, I also don't know who's in the other car.
Right.
So they could be just as crazy as I am. I don't know. It's just, that's so risky.
And especially since they said that there's, no open carry laws in Alaska.
Yeah, everyone's got a gun.
Why? Why risk that?
Because they were bored. I don't know. To be truthful, this freaked me out. I don't scare easily, but having that truck come right at us with bright white headlights in a very dark, deserted street was enough to get my adrenaline pumping. I couldn't keep driving around the neighborhood all night with Mr. Road Rage on my butt. This is rural Alaska, so there aren't many well-lit places with people hanging around. The only convenience store on that end of the island had already closed. Then I remembered that wonderful piece of advice about driving to a fire or police station if you're being followed. Thank you. The Alaska State Troopers have their headquarters along the main road back toward town, so I headed there. The troopers have cameras that cover the entire property, so I knew if we could make it to their parking lot, I could honk and be seen by the dispatcher and any officers inside the building. And they also said I knew 2 dispatchers who worked there. The truck followed us all the way to the troopers' headquarters, which was about 7 or 8 miles. When the driver saw me pull into the troopers' parking lot, he or she turned around and drove back the way we'd come. I went inside to the station and reported what happened. We didn't get a license plate, but I wanted law enforcement to know there was a crazy truck terrorizing people. I think that if I had gone directly home, they would have followed me. Think about it. The driver took more than 30 minutes out of their Friday night to follow us and wait around. He or she must have been really pissed off. Who knows if things would have escalated to violence, but I'm very thankful that we didn't take any chances that night. We did catch our flight to Seattle the next morning and had a very relaxing, long weekend. I am so glad that they were able to do that. I also hope that, in the end, they had someone escort them home, because if they waited at the school, what's to say that they wouldn't wait again? But
yeah,
I'm curious to know if they ever had any other people like, report someone.
Oh, that's a good point.
And I think I've also said this too, but, like, you can always call the non-emergency phone number or just call 911 and they can transfer you to the non-emergency while someone's following you. And then they can direct you to the nearest police station and they can kind of calm you down along the way. But, like, they would much rather you do that than go home and risk it.
Yeah, I would absolutely not go home. I would drive for as long as I needed to down, like, towards well-lit roads. But
yeah. I think in Alaska, those are few and far between.
That's true. That's absolutely true. It is all rural for a reason.
Yeah. Okay, I was just seeing if there were any comments from people saying that, like, they've also been in those situations there. Oh, man.
What?
Oh. This is crazy.
What?
Someone posts and said, any chance this could have been Israel Keys? If you're in a true crime, you know who he is. And this is very similar to what he has done. They said supposedly he's killed a few people with that method of getting people to stop on dark roads. He learned about it from Bundy, and they were like, not trying to freak you out, seriously. And then someone else said, and if this story happened literally 7 or 8 years ago, Keys would have already been custody or dead. Okay. Arrested in March. Okay. That's why I was like,
I had like full on goosebumps. I'm like, I'm not okay right now.
I know. I was not doing the timeline, but like, just they were like, it was in the past. But yeah, he was arrested in 2012, and I guess, I don't know, this was like 15 years ago. I don't know. I still think, I'm not sure how their math is mathing. My math says that it could have been. I don't know. Because he was from Alaska or lived in Alaska.
Yeah, and how long ago was this posted?
This is posted like 6 years ago. And then they said this story happened like 7 or 8 years ago.
That math is mathing.
I don't know. It's crazy. We'll never know. But glad they were okay. And then the OP was like, absolutely not. It was just, they were like, this is a remote Alaska town. It was a local person with some road rage. That's all. You don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know that. And like, I don't know. I'm not gonna try to dissect it. Okay. OP, glad you're okay. Glad this was a long, long time ago. I also wonder if they still live in a tiny island off of Alaska. Because it just sounds scary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Alaska, like, it's one of those places that I definitely want to visit, but I want to do it from a cruise. And I know that sounds really stupid, but I want to do it that way. Like, they're taking me to specific places and I can get off and explore a little bit, but then I can come back and I'm not stuck in one of these places because it freaks me out really bad. Like, of just how vast and how much crime, and even not even crime, but just like how much stuff happens there,
and it's so
that no one will ever find out about,
and it's so unexplored. Like, there's too much space that nothing touches. People don't touch. And how do you know where not to go?
I think that's a phobia, and I think I have it. Like, just scared of really big spaces. I'm sure it is.
Everything is a phobia, but 100% appreciate that one, though. I'll go on the cruise with you, though, if you want to.
Okay, yes, let's do it. All right, our next story. This is from the user Arctic Inhabitor. The subreddit is Backwoods Creepy, and it was from 2 years ago. The post is called A More In-Depth Story from Northern Alaska. Okay, this is from a person that they have made several Alaska story posts, but I just picked one, and y'all are welcome to go to their profile if you want to, because we always link everything, and you can read the rest of their stories. They're all kind of like more folky, ghost, cryptid kind of styles. So, all right. In the fall of 2018, I was going to be leaving for a while. So the night before I was due to leave, I visited my cousin and my deaf aunt one last time for the year. I really hope that the deaf aunt is actually relatable to the story, because otherwise you could have just said it was your aunt. We talked and signed about a lot, from our lives then to what it might be like when I return and be in their kids' lives as their uncle. Relationships in Indigenous communities are different than the Western systems, so my cousin's kids will be/are my nieces and nephews. As the night grew on and the sun faded below the horizon, we felt as if we were being watched. At the time, I smoked cigarettes, so my cousins and I went out to have one, even though we had the eerie feeling of eyes watching our every move. Hate that. My aunt had already gone inside, and little did we know she had brought a high-powered light with her. When we got outside, she was turning night to day in the willows across the street from the house, and we didn't know why until we looked. Oh, I don't like this next sentence. In the willows stood 4 to 6 small people. They looked like anyone else in the village, but they wore clothes made of skins rather than newer materials brought in. And like animal skins, everyone, not like people skins. Their eyes glowed, and one bared its teeth. Thinking about this just freaks me out. Yes, it does. Okay, now this is, before we keep going, this is like a big thing in Alaska. I don't know if when you were doing your research, you saw a lot about this. I don't even know if this is what you're talking about tonight. I don't know how to say it, though. It's like Inuit. There's a word.
And it depends.
For these small people.
It depends. I almost did this for my story tonight, but it really depends on the tribal background, on even in Alaska, on what they're called. Super fascinating. They're little people. But I could not figure out how to say it.
Yeah, so I'm just going to call them the small people because that's what they're like known as. They are little people. But yeah, you should totally look it up because it is a big Alaska. I don't know. It's not cryptid, but like, what do you call it?
Just like it is definitely like folklore, but not cryptid style.
Yes.
It's more along. I guess the thing that I can relate it to the most is probably, and this might just because my Irish heritage, but like the Fae.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. I like that. All right. So the small people stared at us and we stared back. All of us knew we would be safe, so we smoked our cigarettes and then took one last look across the road. My aunt turned off the spotlight, and when she did, the little ones began to move. We could not track where they went with our eyes because of how fast they were. Like blurs, they moved into the willows and built up what they could to hide themselves. And that is when we all turned and ran inside. The next few hours, the front door was knocked on every 3 to 4 minutes, and rocks were thrown at the windows from the willows across the way. I didn't leave until morning, when the light just barely tipped over the mountains. As I walked out to my four-wheeler, I could feel the eyes of the little ones watching me, but I kept a brave face and got the heck out of Dodge. Looking back, had we pointed or shown any signs of being scared or angry, we probably would have been harassed even more. But to this day, I still think of the little people as just distant relatives. And then they say, edit, the little ones I speak of are a cultural entity that are proportionately small and fast. They are mystical beings that my people used to live alongside. So there you go. Mystical beings. Like I said, this person talks a lot about kind of all the different types of Alaska things. I'm trying to look in the comments. Yeah, so someone says, I read it assuming they were referring to fae folk, and that's kind of what they explained it as. But apparently there's not a ton of stuff about them, like as far as actual research. It's more of just stories. Like it is a very passed down kind of folk thing that I'm reading. Because people are like, I tried to Google this and I can't find anything on the, like, no one can really find a ton of stuff about it. So, I don't know. One person said, the Navy on Guam has a problem with these little people entering the Navy magazine where they store a huge amount of ammo. The Marine Guards would see them constantly. That's just funny to me. I don't know why. So those were the little people. And I'm glad that you changed your stuff. That way we could still hear about it a little bit. But now we are going to transition into your story. One thing that's become pretty clear while putting this episode together is that Alaska has a way of getting under your skin. Whether it is the sheer isolation, the people you meet, or the moments you can't quite explain, there's something about this place that does leave a lasting impression. So, before we get back into our listener stories, I'm going to hand things over to Brittany to explore a few of the tales and traditions that make Alaska one of the most fascinating places we will ever visit.
So, this one I wrote is called The Guest Book.
Okay.
And
I like it.
There we go. I had always wanted to see the Northern Lights. For years, I had stared at photographs of ribbons of green and purple dancing across the Alaskan sky. Everyone who had seen them seemed to say the same thing, that it was something you had to experience at least once in your lifetime. So after years of talking about it, I finally booked a trip. I chose to visit in the fall. The air would be crisp, the nights would be long, and with a little luck, I'd finally witness the aurora for myself. After landing in Anchorage, I checked into the historic Anchorage Hotel. It wasn't the newest hotel in the city, but that was exactly why I had chosen it. The lobby felt like stepping back into time. Old black and white photographs lined the walls, the polished wood floors creaked softly beneath my feet, and everything about the building carried the quiet elegance of another era. The woman behind the front desk greeted me with a warm smile as she handed me my room key. "If you're hoping to catch the Northern Lights tonight," she said, "you're here at a good time." I smiled. I've been waiting years for this. After dropping my bags in my room, I spent the evening wandering around Anchorage and stepping outside every so often to scan the sky. Unfortunately, the clouds had other plans. By the time I finally returned to the hotel, it was well after midnight. The lobby was almost completely silent. As I stepped through the front doors, I noticed an older gentleman standing near one of the front windows. His hands were folded neatly behind his back as he looked out over the quiet streets of Anchorage. As I stepped into the lobby, he slowly turned toward me. I offered him a polite smile. He responded with a slight tip of his hat. Thinking nothing of it, I made my way upstairs to my room. The next morning, I packed my things and headed downstairs to check out. The woman at the front desk smiled as she printed my receipt. "Are you sure you don't want to stay another night?" she asked. I laughed. "I wish I could." She smiled. "It's going to be pretty quiet around here anyway." I raised my eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "You're actually our only guest for the next couple of days." I frowned. "Really?" She nodded. "No reservations until the weekend." I couldn't help but laugh. "That's strange." She looked up. "What is it?" I glanced toward the front windows and back at her. "What about the gentleman I saw standing in the lobby last night?" Her fingers stopped moving across the keyboard. After a brief pause, she looked back up at me. "Can you describe him?" He looked older, maybe in his 60s, dark suit, old-fashioned fedora. I paused. He tipped his hat at me. The clerk smiled. "I think you may have met Chief John Blackjack Sturgis." "I'm sorry."
What a name.
"Who?" She glanced over at one of the old photographs hanging behind the front desk. John Sturgis was Anchorage's first chief of police. He spent a whole lot of time here back when the hotel was one of the busiest places in town. I looked back toward the lobby. "So he used to stay here." She nodded. "People around here say that he never really left." She let the words settle before continuing. "You know that little alley beside the hotel? I think I walked past it yesterday. Back in 1921, Chief Sturgis was found there." I frowned. "What happened?" "For most of the last century, everybody believed he had been murdered. He'd only been chief for a few weeks when he was found with a particular wound. and his own service revolver was lying beside him. They blamed bootleggers, organized crime, all kinds of people. She gave a small shrug. That story stuck around for generations, but a few years ago, local historians started digging through old records and uncovered enough evidence to suggest something very different. I waited. They now believe he may have taken his own life. I didn't know what to say. She continued quietly. Back then, that act carried a lot of terrible stigma. His wife would have lost everything. So the thinking is the people around him chose a different story, one that protected her reputation and made sure she still received the insurance money that would have helped her survive. The lobby suddenly felt much quieter than it had a moment ago. I found myself looking back toward the front windows. And people think that's who I saw? She smiled. Honestly, couldn't tell you. But over the years, guests have described an older gentleman standing near those windows. They almost always mention the dark suit, the fedora, the way he politely tips his hat. She held my gaze for a moment. You'd be surprised how many people describe the exact same thing. Then she pointed toward a thick, leather-bound book resting on a small table in the lobby. But if you're curious, you should read the ghost book. Curiosity got the better of me. I picked up the worn leather book, settled into one of the chairs nearby. Different handwriting, different years, different guests, and opening to a random page, I started reading. October 18th, 2017. I woke up just after 3 in the morning because I felt someone sit on the edge of my bed. I reached over thinking it was my husband getting up, but he was asleep beside me. The mattress remained pressed down for several seconds before slowly returning to normal. I turned the page. June 4th, 2019. There was a woman standing at the end of the second floor hallway wearing white wedding dress. She never acknowledged me. She simply stood there staring out the window. I've never seen such overwhelming sadness in someone's face before. When I looked back, she was gone. Next page. January 14th, 2020. I heard footsteps pacing outside my room almost the entire night. Every time I opened the door, the hallway was empty. And then another. August 27th, 2021, our daughter kept waving at a little girl on the second floor. We assumed she belonged to another family until we found out there weren't any other children staying in the hotel. And the next, television turned itself back on 3 different times after midnight. Maintenance checked it next morning and couldn't find a single thing wrong with it. And the next, a bathroom faucet turned itself on while I was brushing my teeth. I laughed it off until it kept happening again and again after I climbed into bed. I kept turning the pages, different years, different guests, different experiences, yet somehow they all ended up in the same book. And just like the others, this is my story. If you're ever staying at the historic Anchorage Hotel, don't forget to leave your own entry in the ghost log, because you never know who might need to read about your experience.
I have actually heard about that hotel. And I
right?
love it.
The fact that a person started a ghost log. It was one of the people, concierge people who started this. And I'm like, oh, that is it.
Yeah. I love it when hotels will lean into it. Like, if it's happening, just accept it. I remember there was one hotel that, I read about, and they were owned by a big hotel company. And so all the staff was told, don't talk about ghosts or anything. And so, this person asked the concierge, and they were like, oh, I don't know. And they kind of brushed it off. But then someone posted a comment in their story and was like, hey, I actually used to work there. We were specifically told we could not bring it up to guests because it was a bad look for the parent.
I think that was in our
company.
Alabama episode. Yeah.
Was it? Maybe it was. I remember it was a hotel. But yeah, it's crazy. I'm like, okay, if a ton of people are telling you, you gotta accept it.
Yeah, absolutely lean into it. And you're gonna get so many people, like so many more people coming in, and less people like leaving freaked out whenever they have these experiences. Because if they have them, like you can't stop them from happening. If the place is legit haunted, you can't stop it. So you might as well just be like, yep, we know what you're talking about. And also to keep employees. How hard is it going to be to keep employees whenever they're also there late and experiencing weird things?
Right. Oh, yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy. The front desk employee placed a guest book in the hotel lobby in 2004. So it hasn't even been logging for very long. Well, 22 years-ish. I think my math is right.
It's not that long.
But for the history of the hotel, since the hotel has been up since 1916. So,
yeah.
I don't know. It is one of the oldest standing buildings in Anchorage. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, but I found that fascinating. There's like so many other stories that just in the hotel, but the whole town is said to be haunted. So.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Sure. Okay, so hopping back into the other stories for tonight, I actually did use another one of the Arctic inhabitors stories. I didn't realize I did, but I did. So this is from the same subreddit, The Backwoods Creepy. This one was from about 2 years ago. It's called Another Story from Rural Alaska. When I was younger and more ambitious in my early teens, I loved to explore the mountains of my home village in the gates of the Arctic National Park. I knew about how dangerous the caves could be in the mountains and never liked to go near them, but I loved waterfalls, big or small, that fell from great heights in the summer. One year, I had just received a Honda Foreman 500 as a gift from my mom. I rarely receive physical items, and I'm not much of a materialistic person, but I do enjoy getting vehicles that I can use for hunting as presents every now and then. Usually they're older models, so they aren't as expensive as the newer models, but I love them just as much and I take care of them as best I can. Anyway, I was driving my new Honda through an old trail that I only knew of as a snow machine trail in the winter. I'd recently learned about the summer trail, and I decided I would go there to explore the valley that it led into. While driving, I began to have the eerie feeling of being watched. The hair on my body stood on end on the side I felt like I was being watched from, so I knew where to glance as I drove. I did my best to keep on the old trail as I began to glance over to my left as frequently as possible. I think that as a hunter, I have developed a better sense of when I'm being watched, and it seems to pay off quite a bit in the wilderness up here. As I looked over, I would scan the willow thickets. As I did, I noticed a dark figure keeping up with me. I hate that. It stood tall, what I presumed to be about 8.5 feet tall, and it was keeping up with me as I was going like 25 miles an hour on a fairly smooth but rocky trail. I kicked the Honda into a higher gear and sped up. I only stopped feeling like it was right beside me after I left the willow thickets. When I was able to, I looked back and watched the willows again. Keep in mind, these are diamond willows that stand about 10 feet tall. And when I saw the figure again, it was nearly as tall as the willows in the brush, and it was able to brush through them with ease as if it was phasing through them or something. I haven't returned to that trail in quite some time, but I would like to return with my cousins to see if we can get any videos or pictures of whatever it is. Sounds like Bigfoot.
I don't know. 8.5 feet tall? I never pictured Bigfoot that tall.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what else is bigger than that. Like, good night.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like a shadowy figure?
They just said a dark figure. So, like,
okay.
I don't know if they just kind of saw the silhouette because they don't really describe it anymore. It's just dark and tall and fast. So, I have no idea. I'm also just like, what else could it have been?
Makes me want to research more on, like, what could be out there.
Right? I know. Now I'm going to have to, like, look through all their other stories and see if they mention him again. Because the comments were just kind of like, whoa, that's crazy, or sounds like Sasquatch or, stuff like that. No one really had any other stories.
Is that the user that I sent you that has like 15 like total stories on their page?
I think they have like 5.
Oh, okay.
But they're all from rural Alaska. All right, this last one I'm really excited about. It is from user Pentyworth223. He has his own subreddit called The Dark Archive. And he writes horror stories. And this entire archive is one universe. So every story that he writes, it all connects in the same world. He also just put out a book on Amazon called Beneath the Wound. So he's awesome. And I highly recommend y'all go read his stories. I really don't want to take a lot of his stories from there because I don't, it's his stuff to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if he's going to make them into books, I just feel bad for reading all of them beforehand. But every now and then I will probably be grabbing 1 or 2 of his. I have a lot of his saved because they're just so good. So I was very excited about him, and I just, a huge shout out. And I sound like I'm fangirling. So.
Hey, girl. We all have our fangirl moments. You
Right.
take it.
This story specifically I found on the horror story subreddit. So
Okay.
I think for me, what I'm going to try to do is if I do use one of his, it's going to be one that is on multiple subreddits instead of ones that he just decides to keep on his own subreddit. I think that is what we'll be doing.
That makes sense, though. That helps, like, keep a little bit of a thing there.
This one is called I Took My Son Hiking in Alaska and Only One of Us Came Back. So, and this one is very long, so please bear with me, but I think it is worth it. So
strapped in. No, I'm ready. All
right.
Sitting here. It's going to be good.
The trail on the map had a name, Elkhorn Creek Corridor, and the map showed it as a solid line running northeast for about 7 miles before it hooked back toward a parking area. By the time we'd been walking for 40 minutes, the solid line had become a suggestion, and by the time we'd been walking for 2 hours, it had become nothing at all. I stopped at the base of a small rise and looked at the printout I'd folded into quarters in my hip pocket. The creek was supposed to be a 1/4 mile to our left. I could hear it. Good. But the trail should have been clearer than this. The alder here was dense and close, the ground beneath the trees soft and uneven. Nothing that looked like repeated foot traffic. Is this still it? Caleb asked. He was a few steps behind me, picking his way around a patch of standing water. 11 years old and already careful about wet boots. Should be, I said. He looked at the ground ahead, then at me. He didn't say anything, which was already a version of the conversation we weren't having. We'd been planning this for 3 months. My idea, 2 nights out, just the 2 of us, far enough from cell service that the wheat couldn't reach us. Since the divorce was finalized in February, I'd been trying to find the right register for things. When to push, when to give him room, how to make the time we had feel like something rather than an obligation that we were both being careful about. We'd done weekends at my apartment, movies, takeout, video games, and he pretended to let me win at them. It was fine. Fine was the word that just sat on top of it all like a lid. I wanted something that he'd actually remember. Something that felt like us trying instead of just managing. So, interior Alaska, late September, 2 nights, a trail that stopped being a trail. I folded the map and kept walking. We'd been on the ground maybe 20 minutes when I found the first marker. Orange surveyor's tape tied around the limb of a black spruce at about eye height. Trail marker, standard. Except the tape was wrong. Vivid orange, still saturated, the kind of color that hasn't had any weather to it. The knot was tight and even a way that felt recent. I stood there looking at it, and then I looked back down at the path at the other markers that we passed. Faded, half unspooled, most of them gone gray-pink, the color had drained out over a season or 2 of exposure. This one looked like it had been tied this week. I moved on without saying anything. Caleb was the one who found the footprints. He stopped at a section of soft ground near the creek edge and crouched down, looking at the impressions. They go over here, he said. I came back and looked. He was right. Boot prints going in both directions, in and out, but the overlap was wrong. The stride length on the return set didn't match the outbound set. Both sets were roughly the same boot size, same basic tread, but the spacing was off by several inches on every step, like two different people who wore the same shoes. Hikers, I said. Different people, different times. Caleb looked at the prints for another few seconds and then stood up. He didn't argue. He also didn't drop it. I could tell from the careful, blank look he developed sometime in the last year, the one he used when he decided something wasn't worth explaining. The soda can was 20 feet further on. Mountain Dew pressed flat into the duff, partly buried. The label was hardly faded. I picked it up by reflex. Packing out other people's trash was something that my own father had made a habit in me. The bottom was clean. A can that had been out in the woods for more than a few months picked up moisture, staining, oxidization, debris pressed into the metal, but this one had nothing. It had been there a week or maybe less. I put it in the outer pocket of my pack and kept walking. We made camp in a flat area above the creek, 30 feet of elevation separating us from the water. Caleb pointed out immediately that it wasn't the river, which I had said we'd camp near. The creek feeds into the river, I said. It's practically the same. It's not the same. For our purpose, it is. He looked at the creek, then at the tent site, then seemed to decide this was a reasonable argument to table. He gathered flat rocks for a stove pad without being asked. He knew to do things like that. He paid attention. The Coleman gave me trouble, and Coleman is like a little stove for non-camping people. I tested it in the kitchen 2 nights before and it had worked fine, but the wind here came in low off the slope and kept killing the flame before the burner caught. Third attempt, I cupped my hands around the igniter and blocked the wind with my jacket and held very still until I heard it running steady, then backed away slowly like it might change his mind. When I finished taking the tent, Caleb organized the food pack. I had to restack the fuel canisters twice. I'd put them in wrong. I adjusted the rain fly attachment, even though the forecast was clear and the sky had been clear all day. I found myself checking the tent poles for cracks. There weren't any, but I checked anyway. Caleb looked at me once while I was on my third pass around the tent, adjusting things that didn't need adjusting. I said I just wanted to make sure everything was squared away before dark. He nodded and didn't push it. We ate instant noodles and jerky around 7. Caleb sorted the cashews out of the nut mix and left the rest, and I watched him do it without comment. The fire was good, dry wood, steady burn, and the cold was coming off the ridge in slow, regular drops, maybe a degree every 20 minutes. By 8 o'clock, I was grateful for my jacket, and Caleb had pulled his hood up. The scream came when he was finishing his food. Distant, a long way off, high and thin, almost like a recording of something at the far edge of its range. It had a human pitch to it, the upper registry of a woman's voice calling out for something, and it stretched and then just stopped. 4 seconds, maybe 5. Caleb went completely still with his fork halfway to his mouth. Fox, I said. I said it calmly and quickly, the way you say things when speed is a substitute for certainty. That wasn't a fox. Red fox sounds almost exactly like that. Distance changes the pitch. He set his fork down and looked in the tree line to the southeast. He was doing something with the information, filing it, measuring it against something else. Why would someone be way out here? He said. I looked at him. He wasn't talking about the fox anymore. He'd made the same jump I had and come out at the same uncomfortable place. A person out here at this hour making that sound. I didn't have a good answer. I poked at the fire with the stick and let the silence do whatever it was going to do. I woke up at 2 a.m, cold and needing to move. Caleb was asleep beside me, breathing slow and even, his bag pulled all the way up over his face, the way he slept when the temperature dropped. I laid there for a minute, listening to the creek, and then the sound came again. Inside 100 yards, maybe less. Same pitch, same quality, but not the same distance. I'd heard it at dinner from a quarter mile out at minimum, and this was right there, the other side of the tree line. It went on longer this time, closer to 8 or 10 seconds, and then it stopped. The way a sound stops when something interrupts its source. Not faded, not trailed off, just gone. I set up in the dark and found the inReach by feel. Good signal, 4 bars. No alerts, no messages. I pulled up the position screen and it showed us exactly where I expected, right on the creek drainage, 2.4 miles northeast of the trailhead. I sat there listening. The sound didn't come back. The creek kept going, wind moved through the spruce to the west, and that was it. I lay back down there and watched the tent ceiling and didn't sleep again until almost 5. Caleb was already outside when I unzipped the tent. 6:15, light barely coming in, gray and flat, off the eastern ridge. He was sitting on the flat rock he'd used as a chair on the night before, boots on, jacket zipped up all the way, watching the tree line to the southeast. "You heard it," I said. "Right there," he pointed, "right behind the trees, really close." I went and looked. The ground between our camp and the trees was soft enough that I could see my own tracks from the night before. The impressions were clear and sharp. At the edge of the tree line, in a section maybe 6 feet wide, the surface was disturbed. Nothing that read as footprints, more like something had shifted weight across it in a pattern I didn't have a category for. Like movement, but not the kind I could name. "Moose," I said, "probably a moose." Caleb looked at the marks for a moment, then at me. He had his patient face on, the one that meant he was deciding whether I actually believed what I was saying. We made coffee and oatmeal and broke camp in 40 minutes. I told him the plan was to push northeast toward the ridgeline for the views and then come down on the other drainage and make our second camp closer to the trailhead. He asked if that was always the plan. I said, more or less. He nodded and picked up his pack. I kept looking back while we hiked, checking the tree line we'd left behind, checking the slopes. Caleb noticed, but he didn't say anything for the first hour. When we were crossing a wide bench below the ridgeline, open ground, good sight lines, wind in our faces, the sound came again. It started far away, the right distance, the right pitch, behind us and to the south, a quarter mile at minimum. I had time to register it and started to turn before it was close. Same note, same pitch, but suddenly no distance at all. The sound right there, somewhere within 30 or 40 feet to the east, and no transition between the two states. No build, no fade in. Far and then there. I had my hand on the inReach before I knew I'd moved. Caleb had stopped walking. He was standing 2 paces ahead of me, looking east, completely still. "It's following us," he said. He wasn't wrong. I've been trying to build an alternative explanation for the last mile, and none of them are holding. The things I noticed standing there on that open bench, Caleb had stopped before the sound got close, while it was still distant, still reading a quarter mile out. At half a second before the volume shifted, before there was any reason to stop, his body had been ahead of all the information. I told myself he'd been watching the tree line and seen something move. I held on to that for the next few hours. "We should keep moving," I said. The terrain worsened through the afternoon. The bench gave way to slope, loose rock and thin soil, the kind of ground that costs you 3 steps for every 2 you intend. The spruce grew narrow and tighter here, the ground beneath them broken up with root humps and soft spots that grabbed in your boots. We were off anything resembling a path. I checked the inReach every 20 minutes. On my third check, standing still on a flat section while Caleb rested his knee, I watched the GPS position indicator drift. We hadn't moved. I've been standing in the same spot for 2 minutes. The coordinate display showed us sliding northeast, 30 feet, 40, and then holding. I hit reset. It stabilized. A minute and a half later, it started moving again. Slow. 10 feet, 15. back to where it had been before I reset it. I put it away without saying anything. The sound came at irregular intervals after that, every 30 or 40 minutes, and it was changing. The beginning was right, and the ending was right, but the middle had started going wrong. Not louder or quieter, but structurally off. The pitch wandering through the center of the sound like something that had been listening carefully and had started producing its own version without fully understanding what made the original work. Caleb was walking close to me, close enough that I could have reached out and touched his shoulder without fully extending my arm. He spent the first day ranging out a bit, stopping to look at things, the natural drift of a kid on a hike who's interested in his surroundings. Now he stayed within arm's reach and didn't stray. We found a site just before the light died, flat ground, protected on two sides by a low rock spur, enough deadfall in the perimeter that I could feed a fire without stripping the area bare. My legs were done, and Caleb was favoring his right knee on the downhills. We weren't making the trailhead tomorrow without an early start. I looked at the inReach and thought about sending a non-emergency message, and decided I'd assess it in the morning. The fire took, and I kept it going. I had enough wood for a solid, sustainable fire, and I built one and then kept adding it to past my reasonable point. Caleb had dragged his sleeping pad out of the tent and was sitting on it with his knees pulled up, 4 feet from the edge of the firelight. I told him there was a decent piece of deadfall just behind him, and he could pull in for a seat. But he didn't want to go back from the light to get it. The sticks I was feeding the fire were thin. The fire didn't need any of them. It had a solid base going and was sustaining itself without help, but I just kept picking up the thin sticks and laying them on one at a time, watching each one catch and add its small heat to the whole. I don't know how long I'd been doing it before I noticed the pile to my right. Maybe 40 sticks gone through, maybe more. I stopped when I realized and just held a stick in my hand a while without putting it down. The Glock was on my hip. I'd pulled it out of the pack at noon and I hadn't put it back. I took it out and checked the chamber. The round was seated right. I checked it when I first holstered it and again at 4 in the afternoon, and I knew the round was there. I put it back. About 15 minutes later, when Caleb was drinking from his water bottle and looking toward the north, I took it out and checked the chamber again. Round there. I reholstered it. I didn't do anything with the knowledge that I checked it 3 times. Caleb's eyes moved through the tree line in a pattern. Northwest, then northeast, then due east. Each spot held for a few seconds before shifting to the next. It wasn't the way you looked into the dark when you're afraid of it. Afraid of the dark makes you look away. Reflex and recoil, the quick glance toward and the quicker glance back. He was looking toward, holding position, moving methodically. Like he was watching a specific set of locations and waiting for the status at one of them to change. The fire popped and I laid on another thin stick. After a while, he said, "It sounds like it knows what we're supposed to do when we hear it." I looked at him. His eyes were on the trees. "What do you mean?" He turned the water bottle over in his hand, studying the fire. "Like it knows we're going to stop and face it and listen." He paused. "So it uses that." "Uses it for what?" He shrugged once, one shoulder slow. "I don't know." He looked down at the bottle. "Forget it." I didn't push it and I didn't forget it. I sat there with the fire between me and the dark, and I turned his words over, and the place they kept leading me was somewhere I didn't have a name for yet. So I picked up another stick and laid it on the coals and watched it catch. The sound came once more at 10. The wrong version. Right edges, wandering center. Maybe 200 feet to the west. Caleb heard it and he turned toward it, but he turned a full beat after I did. Not the reflex slowness of someone startled. One clear beat behind. On the bench, he'd been ahead of it. Now he was behind. I kept the fire up until I couldn't keep my eyes open. Caleb's idea to get the wood. The fire had dropped and the temperature was in the low 20s, and he said there was a decent pile of deadfall about 25 feet back from where I'd been pulling from earlier. He was right. I'd seen it when I set up. He said we should go get some. I said we'd go together. Oh, thank goodness. I handed him the flashlight and kept the gun. We went out maybe 20 feet from the fire's edge and started pulling pieces. I was watching the perimeter and trying not to be obvious about it, probably failing. Caleb was working a piece of birch loose from under some other material. I had 2 pieces under my arm. The scream hit and I couldn't locate it. I turned in a slow circle, trying to find a source, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once, or from no direction I could fix on, just present in the air around us without a point of origin. I turned toward where it seemed the strongest, to the northeast, which put the fire behind me and Caleb behind me. I heard the branches, movement to my left, high up, too large for the wind, swinging wrong, and then something tall in the dark between the trees, the shape of it there and wrong before I could do anything with the information. Caleb made a sound, short, gone. I turned back. The space where he'd been was empty. Branches moving hard to the southeast, fast, directional, into the trees. I fired twice into the dark toward the movement. Well, don't shoot at where your son is, okay. The reports came back off the ridge, and then the echo faded, and there was nothing. No branches, no sound. The fire behind me and a circle of dark in every direction. The silence lasted longer than it should have. I searched for an hour. The disturbed ground went on about 15 feet before the trail ended on harder soil. One of his gloves, the left one, on the ground 12 feet into the trees. No blood, the marrow tread in the soft duff beside it. Drag marks that went another 8 feet and stopped on a section of exposed rock where nothing left a mark. I called his name. The first few calls came out controlled, the voice you use when you're telling yourself, this is still a problem with a solution. Then that stopped working and I got louder, and then louder than that. And at some point, I was just making sound because standing in those trees with the flashlight in the dark was not something I could be still inside of. 20 minutes into it, the voice came back. Caleb's voice. His actual pitch. His actual cadence. The specific way he pronounces his vowels. Coming from the northeast, maybe 150 feet out. Dad, I can't find the sentence dropped wrong at the end. A word missing, or the wrong word landing in the wrong position. I couldn't fix exactly what was off, but the voice was right. The way he said Dad was right. With a particular small fall at the end of the word, that meant he needed something from me. I grabbed the gun and the flashlight. I left everything else, the pack, the inReach, the extra rounds, the food, all of it. I went. I moved through the trees following the voice, and it came every few minutes, pulling me northeast. Sometimes it was closer, and sometimes further, and then closer again, without the geography between those points making any sense. I called back between its calls. It answered. The answer's almost always right. I passed a branch broken at chest height. The pale wood, fresh at the break, kept moving. Maybe 10 minutes later, the branch was there again. Same angle, same pale wood facing me, same break. I stopped and looked at it. I told myself there were 100 broken branches out here. I kept going. A boulder about waist high, a strip of pale growth running diagonal across the south face. I'd noticed it when I set up camp and thought it looked like a water stain. I moved past it, going northeast. 15 minutes later, the rock was there again. Same strip, same diagonal, same height. I stood with the flashlight pointed at the ground and tried to think. The voice came from my left. I dropped the flashlight. I'm near, by the big rock. I think there's... The sentence didn't finish right. The word choices sat slightly outside of how Caleb talked, like someone who had been listening carefully to the words but hadn't fully absorbed their weight, repeating something in a language still being learned. I went toward it anyway. I don't know what else I would have done. The footprints came to me while I was walking. The overlapping prints at the creek, the one Caleb had spotted on the way in. The stride links that didn't match. Both sets the same size, same approximate tread, but the spacing off by several inches every step. And the bench, the sound going close and Caleb already stopped, his body ahead of the information by half a second. I found soft ground in a clearing beside some alder and swept the flashlight across it. 2 sets of small boot prints, side by side, roughly parallel, heading northwest. The left set matched Caleb's Merrill Trail Runner tread. I knew it well enough. I'd stood in the store while he walked up and down the aisle, deciding between 2 pair. The right set was close, same approximate size, similar tread pattern, but the stride was off, several inches longer on every step. I crouched over them with the dying flashlight and stayed there longer than I should have. The voice came from ahead, from the direction the prints were headed, something specific. That morning, me at the stove making oatmeal, Caleb asked whether we'd do this again next year. Me saying, I hope so, him saying, okay, in that particular way he had. Not dismissive, not flat. The word sitting down quietly after it the way he said things when he was putting them somewhere he intended to keep. The voice got the okay exactly right. The small pause before it, the quality of the word after it. I stood up and walked toward it. The clearing opened past a stance of spruce, open ground, and low brush. Moonlight and the last of my flashlight battery giving enough visibility to make out shapes clearly. He was at the far edge of the clearing, 40 feet out, standing still and watching me. I said his name. His shoulders were dropped too far, arms hanging loose at his side in a way that had no deliberateness to it. The way a body stands when something has stopped accounting for what it's doing. His jacket was right. His boots were right. His hair was visible past the edge of his hood. I couldn't see his breath in the cold air. I stood there and watched for it, and there was nothing. No small cloud, no movement at the mouth, and the temperature was in the low 20s and had been all night. The scream came from behind me. The original one, the right one, high, thin, full duration, 4 or 5 seconds, and clean all the way through. Not the version with the wandering center. The first version, the one from dinner on the first night, coming from back in the trees, from the direction I'd come from. I turned. There was a shape in the trees behind me. The flashlight was nearly gone, throwing yellow instead of white, and the distance was wrong for what I was looking at, but the shape was there, smaller than what I'd seen moving in the branches at the attack, more the right size. I turned back to the clearing. Both of them on my side at once, the gun already in my hand. I stood there, and I thought about the stride links in the soft ground. I thought about the questions the past day and a half that had landed slightly sideways, the ones I'd read as him being careful with his words, since the divorce, being precise because precision felt safer. I thought about him not turning when the screen hit close at the woodpile. I thought about the glove sitting clean on the ground 12 feet into the trees with no struggle around it. About the drag mark stopping too soon on the rock. The thing in the clearing said my name. David, the way Caleb said it. He was the only person in my life who said it quite that way. Particular. Small fall at the end of the second syllable, learned from a lifetime of hearing it said that way by me. From behind me, from the trees, the shape repeated something back. It's not the same. Practically speaking, it's not the same. The pause is in the wrong place. Practically carrying slightly too much weight, like a word learned by sound rather than meaning. Reproduced without understanding where it was supposed to land. I raised the gun. I stood between the 2 of them and looked from one to the other, and I could not hold all of it at once. The thing in the clearing had said my name right, and its arms were wrong, and its breath was absent. The thing in the trees had gotten the phrase wrong, and I couldn't see it, and the scream had been right, the original, the one that existed before any of this. Both of those things couldn't be true the same way. I left the inReach at camp. I didn't know how far I'd walked or how many times I circled. The flashlight was nearly dead. The temperature was still dropping. My son had been gone for hours, and I was standing in an open field, and I had to choose. I fired. They found me at 0800, about a mile from the trailhead. 2 of them, a state trooper and a park ranger, hiking in from the vehicles. I was on the ground with my back against a spruce, the gun in my lap, the flashlight dead beside me. Malnourished, hypothermic enough that I wasn't tracking well. They got heat on me and water into me and set me up. The ranger asked where my son was. I told him northeast, back up by the drainage, back up by the slope. I pointed into the trees beyond where they'd come from. The trooper wrote it down and got on the radio, and I watched his face while he relayed it. His face was careful and still, giving me nothing. They asked me to describe the route that I'd taken, and I described what I could remember. At some point while I was talking, I heard them discuss the search grid. Northeast, up the drainage, into the area I was pointing toward. I had 12 shots missing from the magazine when they found me. 2 from the attack at the woodpile, 1 from the clearing. I don't know what happened to the other 9. Where I fired them, or what I was aiming at, or whether I was moving towards something or away from it, or whether I was already circling the rock again by then and I just didn't know it. I've gone back over everything I can recover, looking for the moment. Midday on the bench. That's where I keep landing. The sound going close, and Caleb already stopped, already there, ahead of it by half a second. Maybe that's where it happened. Maybe it was earlier. The overlapping prints at the creek had 2 different stride lengths, which means 2 kids, which means I may have thought I had 1 child with me from the trailhead on. I don't know. The questions he asked that first day and a half, almost right, in the right register, the right vocabulary, but landing slightly outside of where Caleb's questions usually landed. I told myself it was the divorce, that he'd learned to be careful with his words. I told myself it was something I'd done to him. I told myself a lot of things in those 2 days. My name in the clearing. I've played it back in every configuration I have access to. Both of them had the inflection right, or close enough that I couldn't separate them in the moment. The one in the clearing had it exactly right, and was wrong in every physical way I could see. The one in the trees had gotten the quoted line wrong, and I couldn't see it clearly, and the screen before it had been the right version. Both of those things couldn't be true in the same way, and I was standing in a field at midnight, and I fired. The search grid ran northeast into the area I pointed them toward. I came from the north. I've thought about why I said northeast, and I don't have an answer that's settled. Maybe I was disoriented in the circling. Maybe the clearing was northeast, and that's where my hand went without thinking. Maybe after hours in those trees, I was still following the voice, even after everything. And the voice had been pulling me northeast, and that's where my arm pointed when they asked. That last one is the one I come back to. There were 2 of them in that clearing. One said my name right and had no breath in 20-degree air. One quoted something wrong and I couldn't see it. I raised the gun and I fired, and I don't know which direction I was facing when I did. And I don't know which one I hit, and I don't know which one walked out of those trees the next morning while the search team went the other way. I don't know which one they're still looking for.
No!
And that's how it ends.
No. Oh, Bree.
Yes.
Oh, my heart is not going to handle more stories like that.
No, they're good. He's a good
Excellent.
writer. And I just love how it's like, it fit our podcast so perfectly because it's not one that is like, he's in a haunted house and it's so spooky and so scary and there's so many jump scares. It's just like slow dread and terrifying, but like not because something is chasing after you, but just something is just there. Like, I don't know. It was just such a
you
good,
honestly don't know if it's like a human unease story or if it has like a supernatural or like folklore vibe. Like you don't know. And
It's so crazy.
Is he the villain? Is Dad the villain? What happened? There's so many questions. And
I don't know.
I'm going to have to follow that link and find some answers? Question mark? Probably not.
Right? I know. I don't know if he wrote... I'll have to look. I was going to see if anyone asked about a part 2. Because he does write multiple parts in a lot of his stuff. Which is why I think he would make a good Patreon storyteller. Okay, nope. People just said we love this.
Maybe we can email him and see what he thinks.
Yeah. There is, okay, so there is like that location he's done stuff for. So I need to find like his, like, I need to map out how he's written his stories and stuff because I haven't figured out the direction that they go and who's who and all that stuff. But like I said, he's got a lot of really good stories.
I see you with the giant board behind you with all of the pens and the...
Yes, that will be me. I figured it out.
Here it is.
Yep. All right. I think that's where we're going to leave it tonight. Alaska is one of the most beautiful places on Earth. But after reading these stories, it's hard not to wonder if that same beauty can make you forget just how vulnerable you really are. If there's a story that you would like us to read, or if you have a story that would fit perfectly with our state series, please send them in. You can email us at statichourpodcast@gmail.com or contact us on any of our socials. I'm Bree, and this is Brittany, and you have been listening to the Static Hour. We are going off the air. Good night.
Good night.